welcome to the How of High Performance. I'm thrilled today to have an amazing guest with us, Colin Burgess, who is the Executive Director of Operations for BAFTA. So Colin, welcome. Thank you so much for taking part.
Hi, Sally, and well, it's good to be with you.
So I'd love just to understand, Colin, if you can share a brief overview of your career so people listening or watching just have a sense of where your insight and wisdom comes from.
Okay, so I left school at 17 and then went to the army. I joined the army and had my 18th birthday at Sandhurst Military
Wow.
Academy for officers, and was commissioned into the Irish Guards in London. I spent a couple of years with them, and also did an infantry tour in Northern Ireland with attached to the Scots Guards. I then spent some time in Central America, in Belizean, Central America, and then infantry work, and I elected to become an Army helicopter pilot. So I went on the Army Pilots course, spent 4 years flying helicopters, and then my last 2 years of my service in the Army, I was asked to be the personal assistant to the Queen Mother, the equerry to the Queen Mother, which I did from 1994 to 1996.
Wow.
I then left the army and pursued the career that I had really always wanted to do after the army, which was to work in television. And I did a resettlement course with the army with the BBC in 1996, and then I started working in TV. I was very lucky on in my TV career to get a break with Wingspan Air and Space Channel, which is an American TV channel who did most of the Wings Discovery series, and they were looking for someone to run the UK operation. And having only been in the world of TV for less than 6 months, but with aviation experience, I was able to get into that role, and I sort of set up the UK channel with significant help from lots of other people, and that was so my first proper TV job was running a TV channel, and all went downhill after that. I then had lots of other roles in TV production, and then after the Twin Towers event, the world of TV kind of slightly crashed a little into digital production, and ended up working for some freelance gigs for Adidas and Nike, launching websites. I then ended up working for the Central Office of Information, central government, digital products and web services for them for about 6 years. Left there and worked in a number of places, including Video Arts, the company set up by John Cleese. I was head of production for Video Arts for a few years. Then ended up at Sky, where I was head of interactive TV services, and then ended up as the director of operations for Sky Studios. I left Sky in and set up my own consultancy for a while, doing operational overhauls of other businesses. The last business that I did an operational overhaul of was BAFTA, and I've been here for the last 2.5 years.
Colin, that is a story and a half. I feel like we should have our own show just dedicated to that. What diversity of experience and characters, from the Queen Mother to John Cleese.
Yeah.
To the corporate world of Sky, and then the incredible now celebrity world of BAFTA. I mean, pretty amazing. Congratulations on achieving all of that thus far.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm sure there are many times you have navigated yourself and others through high stakes in that incredible career you've just shared with us. Can we start, Colin, by just, if you can, as simply and as in kind of human language as possible, give me your definition of how you define high stakes?
General Patton once said of leadership. He said leadership is the ability to make soldiers win a war they otherwise wouldn't. And I thought that was really succinct and all encompassing, especially when you have lots of people trying to put their handle on what leadership is or what it isn't. But I think to say that it's the ability to make soldiers win a war they otherwise wouldn't, I think is brilliant. And I think in context of what is high stakes, well, I think it really depends on your perspective of where you are and what you're doing. My opinion on high stakes in the world of, let's say, TV might be very different from the world of high stakes if I was an emergency room doctor, for example.
Absolutely.
However, what I can say is that ever since I left the army, I've probably been in higher pressure situations since I've left the army than when I was in the army.
Wow.
And even in the army, when I was let's say flying helicopters in areas where you're either shot at or blown up. Yes, it's stressful, but you're also working to operational guides and operating procedures where you just do the next thing that you're supposed to do, and then you do the next thing you're supposed to do. And whether you're doing that in the military, or whether you're doing that in the world of film and TV, or whether you're doing that in the world of medicine, or whatever it is, we all have pressures. We all have deadlines. We all have a process to go through, and we all have somewhere that we need to be. So the definition, I think, of high stakes is something which is important to your survival, whether it's survival as a human being, survival as a professional, your professional survival, or your family survival. High stakes is something which is meaningful and important. So I would say that it's survival. So it's survival of your integrity, survival of your family, survival of your career, survival of people.
Yes, it is. And I pause because you've got my brain ticking and ticking and ticking by what you've just shared there. So, hard question now, Colin. Give me an advance for that, because I want to ask you about, well, a high stakes moment, but I don't want to restrict us because I'm sure there's quite a few amazing ones you've had in that diversity of career. But can you pick maybe one or two from different times in your career, high stakes moments when you had to lead through those, and just give us an understanding of what was that high stakes moment in that context? Perhaps one from the military, or I don't often get someone who's been the equerry to the Queen Mother on my show, but my granny used to teach the Queen Mother to dance the Gay Gordons. That's another conversation to have for another time. But any, from working in the royal household, from military, from working where you are currently in BAFTA, key high stakes leadership moment, and some of those practical steps you took to navigate through.
In 1988, I was serving in Central America, in Belize in Central America, as a platoon commander we spent a lot of time in the jungle and moving through very dense secondary jungle with like machetes and stuff. Anyway, one of my soldiers was bitten by a spider, and his hand went numb.
Oh, shudder at the idea.
And we all sort of sat down and gave him a cup of tea and some chocolate, and we just kept an eye on him, and then his wrist went numb, and then his arm went numb up to the elbow, and then it carried on going. By the time it got past his elbow, I was like, okay, to sort something out here. So we got on the radio, and it was a very because it's the jungle, you have to drape out this very long antenna, which is about 20 meters long, over the trees, and so that you can actually get radio signal. And we called a Puma helicopter to come and collect him, take him back to the hospital. But there wasn't a helicopter landing spot where we were because it was the jungle.
Yeah.
So we had to get all the lads to cut with their machetes a hole in the jungle, so that this helicopter could come and land. and pick him up. And of course, all the while, we had to kind of make sure that he was, okay. And by the time the helicopter landed, he actually his chest had gone cold, and he was having problems breathing, and all
Gosh,
sorts of yeah. So
gosh.
so I think we all just had to just really focus on the job in hand, because we also knew we only had a short period of time before the helicopter arrived, and by then we had to have cut a hole in the jungle. So there were lots of component parts to kind of get right, and of course the whole his safety depended on him being able to be airlifted by this helicopter. So
Well,
there
he's
was a
alive.
there was yeah. So
No,
there was a lot of pressure there, but everyone pulled in the same direction, and that worked out, and it worked out well. So that's a kind of example of like a real world problem where actually many people many people don't in real in real life. It's rare, I think, to sometimes it's rare to get tested. Um, um, another
well,
example,
let me just pause you there 1 second, Colin, because I'm
yes.
just really fascinated. What did you do as the
Mm,
leader who is
mm,
responsible for everybody in that
mm,
situation, specifically the poor injured guy?
yeah,
What enabled you to successfully work out how to navigate that high stakes situation, which is quite
mm,
unique, let's put it
yeah,
that way.
yeah.
What steps went through your mind as that leader
Mm,
that enabled it to be come despite all the odds to get to that outcome?
yeah. I think, Sally, one of the things you remember with the military is that the military is set up beautifully to handle crisis
Yeah,
situations, because you have a group of people over here who are leaders. You have a group of people over here who are trained to receive information and receive orders. Um, and I would say without question, but that it's never without question. And actually, we always encourage people to question things. Moments of when it really matters most, when there is danger, there is something about to blow up, there is something that's going to happen, and you give people instructions, they tend to move. And that's the one thing that happens in the military, is it when it comes to the crunch, and you are in a kind of life or death situation, everyone kind of pulls together, and they know that it's really important. I'm not sure. I could say to my children at the moment, this is a really important situation. We've got, the number of times I say to them, it's really important we get
oh
out.
yeah.
Yeah, for grandma's birthday, and they're still on their bed and playing on their iPad, and they have no concept of time and whatever. So that whole sense of urgency just doesn't exist. But in the military, it's really good, because that sense of danger, urgency, importance, if you turn around to a soldier and say, you know, this is a life or death scenario, you have got to do this, otherwise,
So
soldiers tend to kind of get straight into that.
it was your training then to be that leader that enabled you to then just
It
go
was
on.
all of our training. So it was my
Yeah,
training as an officer
yeah,
to lead soldiers. It was their training as soldiers to accept
yeah.
uh,
Clear
clear,
roles, responsibilities.
clear roles and
Yeah.
responsibilities, and yeah, so that's really helpful. And also, we it was really clear that what was required. It was like, well, we better ring the base, and I think and they said, well, is there anywhere for us to land? They said over the radio, and I think we all looked at each other and we're like, no. I said, we're gonna have to cut. We're gonna have to cut, and everyone could see that what the rationale was. It wasn't like I was asking them to do, like, spray paint the trees a different color. They could see exactly why we were doing what we were supposed to do, and they all completely bought into it. But that's the other thing, of course, with anything which is high stakes scenarios, or any change that you're going through, is that the crucial thing is to get people on the journey with you. And the only way to get people on the journey with you is to explain what it is that you're doing and why,
Nice.
and the impact that their role is going to have on that thing. So we need to, so rather than cut a hole for a helicopter, well, that's the information, right? I mean, that was the instructions. It's like, Jones over here has just been bitten by a spider. He's probably got about an hour and a half before he loses consciousness and possibly his life. We need to get a hole cut in the jungle ASAP so that a helicopter can come and land and take. And everyone's like, "Yeah, got it,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right."
yeah.
So because they were all tired, they were they'd all been walking,
Oh, the humidity and
humidity, and
yeah,
it's like it was a really a hard thing to do, right? But
yeah, yeah.
given the context and knowing the
Nice.
reason that they're doing it is the thing. So so I think the important things with high stakes is if you are asking people to do something, if you let them know that this is a high stakes scenario, all right, then uh, you can do that. Yeah.
That's so helpful. Thank you, because I just felt there was some magic and we got the magic there. So thank you so much in bringing it
Yeah.
to life more.
Yeah.
And maybe if we can, anything from your current role in BAFTA, because that's a
Um,
fascinating world. Most people don't get to understand.
yeah. So I think, do you know what is interesting? What is tell me a high stakes TV and awards moment. Well, okay. Um,
Compared to the jungle, I know it seems a bit different, but
y-
still.
yeah. So high stakes. Some of the things that we have to do ensure safety at the awards, and so we regularly are tested by individuals who try and break into the awards, who try and hack our systems or whatever it
Crikey.
may be, and it happens all the time. Time. So we have a really robust process that we go through to stop that from happening. Can't give you the details, but we basically go through a range of mitigation planning and preventative measures to kind of stop these things from happening. But if something were to happen, we also have procedures that we get stuck into in order to in order to kind of minimize the impact of anything if it does happen. So again, we are we plan for things that we really hope are never going to have to happen, and a large group of people down, in the venue, and you work with the police, with our teams, with our awards and content team who build the awards, and you go through with it with a security consultant looking at all the possible things that could go wrong. Now, of course, in our world, someone jumping up on stage might not seem like a big deal in terms of the corporate world or in terms of the military. But of course, the reality is that represents if someone were to get into the awards and get up on stage or running around the auditorium, we don't know whether or not they've a knife or a bomb or so.
Yeah.
We have to be really, really listeners there. You have members of the royal family. So there's a lot. I would say that's pretty high stakes in terms of keeping the security of that group of people tight and making sure that everyone is safe and well.
And how do you keep yourself in a good place to be managing that? So let's say something happens and what you don't want, because it is constant high stakes until you can say, great, that went well, everyone was
Yeah.
okay, there was no breach. How does Colin, in the senior leadership role that you have, maintain your own presence? Where do you draw on to navigate that high stakes as a senior leader in it?
So we have a senior leadership team, and that team we have our exec director of awards and content who is in charge of the awards. We have a head of awards. We have really clear roles and responsibility of who is running what bit. It all runs like clockwork. Anyone who's experienced film or TV production will let it's every bit as tricky as being in the military. Most military officers I know would probably make quite good TV producers, and vice versa. So the awards, our awards and content team are amazing individuals. I mean, they're all really razor sharp, literally military precision operations that they run. So what that means is that everyone is then able to and just relax, because everyone knows that everyone is doing their job really well.
The trust.
And there is a trust thing.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like that graph that the Navy SEALs drew of their performance, and they drew this graph, and they have trust on one axis and skill on the other axis. And what they really want is people who are in the top right-hand corner who are very skillful and highly trustworthy. But
Nice.
what they would, if they're going to relent on anything, they would rather relent on a bit of the skill. They'd rather have someone who's highly trustworthy, and maybe isn't as skillful as someone else, or even a lot less skillful than someone else, but they're highly trustworthy.
Yeah.
So and I think that as they say, it's the balance between, would you trust someone with your life or your wife? And so I think that's when you have a group of people who are extremely good at what they do, it enables you to relax a little.
Yeah.
And when I've had experience of working with soldiers in the special forces, when you look at them operating, they look like they're on holiday. They're really relaxed, and they're really calm, and they kind of usually got shaggy hair, and they kind of they sort of flip flop around. You think, these guys look like they're kind of having a day off. But actually they are razor sharp, and they're not needing to march around, looking like they're efficient, because they're actually really, really good at what they do. So there's a calmness. There's a calmness that exists in a high performing team of people that you often don't find in other places. When you're in a cockpit of an aircraft, you very rarely hear a pilot screaming and yelling and it's like, oh, hello everyone, and you'll probably find that we are running a little bit late, and the oxygen mask will be popping down as we are 2,000 feet per second. That you adopt this is your captain speaking voice, and actually that is a tool that I often use when the going gets tough in any scenario that I've been in, whether it's the military or TV or BAFTA or wherever, is if you force yourself into the kind of the mode of this is your captain speaking, it keeps everyone calm, including yourself.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Colin. That's I cannot wait to extract this and put it in the book. What about life, Colin? Because leadership high stakes doesn't just happen in business; it happens in life. And would you be happy to share a high stakes moment from your life that you've gone through and how you successfully navigated through?
Yes. So I've had a number of. I've been made redundant.
Okay.
4 times, in fact.
Wow. Yeah.
And each of those times, I was absolutely sure that I was never going to work again. Each time.
Wow.
I think the second time that I got redundant, I lost my house
Gosh,
and
Colin.
everything. It was, there was a lot
Gosh.
going on. It was terrible. So I think what I've learned is that you basically is resilience. Is to um, keeping on. And one of the things I've learned quite recently, actually, or relearned, is the value of hard work. By that, when I say hard work, I mean resilient hard work, resilience and consistency. So 2 years ago, I took up a martial art that I'd long wanted to do, and I've had a long history of starting martial arts and giving it up, just because I was lazy or just not focused enough, whatever it may be. And a couple of years ago, I took up traditional Wing Chun Kung Fu, the teacher I have is very good, and he's very militant, and he's very on regularly. You've got to do this, and he shouts at me all the time, and I'm just like ah. And the thing it's helped me to kind of realize is that through perseverance, you can create a better future.
Hmm.
If you say to someone, if you say to anyone, you can't learn a skill or an art through repetitive, and doing things by rote. Well, I would try learning the piano without doing repetition. Try learning piano without doing like scales or understanding how the notes fit together. You know, what I've learned, I think, throughout the times that I've been made redundant, and I kind of group them all into one unhappy blob, I suppose, is that just keep on going. You have confidence in your own skills, in your own abilities, um, and just find what's important, and try to resolve that. Yeah, and we all have the things important to us. Usually, it starts with financial security, relationships, a job, and all the rest of it. Um, you know, Try and keep a hold of those things that are close to you, important to you, close, and keep on going.
Yeah. It's that practical, no nonsense, just get
Yeah,
things right.
yeah. I recently read the Marcus Aurelius um, um, meditations, um,
Ah,
it's a wonderful book, and it's thousands of years old. But when you read it, you look at it and think, hang on, this could have been written like yesterday. Yeah,
wow.
it's all these really short paragraphs, which are all of them are little life lessons about not taking yourself too seriously, getting on with it, just pressing on, just the right thing, even when no one's looking, just you know,
Fascinating.
consistency. And I was inspired to look him up after watching the film Gladiator, and Marcus Aurelius, of course, was the
Uh-huh.
was
Father of
the
a
was
murdered wife.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Son, rather, husband of a murdered wife.
Yeah, yeah, and so he plays the Caesar in that the Russell Crowe reports into, and I was like, oh, he's an interesting character. He was quite straightforward, and so I sort of looked him up, and actually, that Marcus Aurelius was quite a philosophical character, linguist, and very thoughtful individual. But his whole thing was about stoicism, and stoicism is about accepting that life is hard. Obstacles are not in the way; they are the way.
I like that. There's a quote, Colin. There's a mic drop moment.
No, that's not that's me. That's
no, but you are being the voice of that quote. I can't get him on the podcast, can I? I could try. So we're just sort of coming into our last moments.
Yes.
But hopefully there's enough time if you could consolidate, and I was going to joy just to listen to you, Colin, consolidate the key lessons you've taken around navigating high stakes situation, maybe the top 3 lessons you've got from all the diversity of the lessons you've gone through personally and professionally, and then give us your one. If you could only share one practical piece of advice with a fellow senior seasoned leader and human to help them get through high stakes well. So little kind of drop down of 3 if I can, and then it can either be one of those or an additional, and this is the one. Go, Colin.
I would say that the thing that's always managed to kind of keep me going is to work out what's the worst thing that can happen.
Interesting.
What is the worst thing that can happen? Now, I don't know if it's a pessimist or an optimist once said that however bad the situation is, it can always get worse. And I do love that. But I think that for me, understanding what the worst that can possibly go wrong in a situation gives you a practical view of the worst thing for you can plan for it. You can put mitigations in place. You can train yourself so that that thing doesn't happen. You know, if the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to, you know, crash the car. Okay, you can work out how not to do that, right? So if you can work out the worst thing that can possibly happen today is I'll lose my job or I'm going to miss lunch or whatever, then just you've got something to focus on and you've got something to work out how to avoid, and also you know, understanding what the worst that can happen gives you a sense of perspective. It gives you a sense of perspective on the day. You know, my wife works in catering, and yeah, and I remember she came home one day and just said, you know, these ice cream molds broke, and it ruined her day.
Oh gosh!
And I'm thinking, you know, what? But of course, it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, all relative.
If your job hinges on getting this one thing done, and the thing that you've got to make that breaks, well, then it's a high stakes scenario for you.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So what might be high stakes for me is totally different for someone else. But anyway, so that would be my thing is to try and understand what the worst possible thing that can happen, and then just go from there.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I think you've already given us your lessons I would like to end on a positive, saying I think this has been one of the best things that could have happened, having this conversation, and I thank you greatly. You've been incredibly generous, wise, and entertaining. So thank you so much for coming on the How of High Performance.
You're welcome.